Welcome back, everybody. The next video on the agenda is the Reagan Era, part one of two parts. Vocabulary for the day: supply side economics, deregulation, national debt, and budget deficit. Very economy focused vocabulary for today. Read through it to understand and then move on. In the last video, we saw some new tenets of the new right, the Republican Party. And one of the new tenets was tax cuts. So President Reagan believed that what he believed in was supply side economics. This comes to be known as Reaganomics. It also comes to be known as trickle down economics. But simply put, the idea behind supply side economics was the president would reduce taxes, and reducing taxes specifically on the wealthy put more or kept more money in the pockets of people. Especially when it comes to the wealthy, this would allow them to have more money on hand to invest and then start up new companies or expand upon already created companies. And in turn, or in the end, this creates new jobs, new opportunities for other people. So the effect of um, the wealthy having money will eventually trickle down and help others by getting them jobs. Another tenet of the new right was deregulation. So, what is deregulation? Deregulation removes federal government involvement. So, just like with cutting taxes, the government is becoming less involved, it's giving back more of people's incomes, or it's not taking it rather through taxes. Here, this is the government enacting fewer laws or having fewer restrictions on industry. Another way to put that would be to have less red tape. One of the things that deregulation does is that it encourages something such as entrepreneurship. Um, the more red tape, the more steps in order to achieve something such as maybe obtaining a patent. This is more difficult, is more costly, and can discourage entrepreneurship. But if you get rid of if you get rid of red tape, if you deregulate the process, then it can encourage something like entrepreneurship. At the same time, less government involvement or fewer laws or restrictions can also increase negative effects such as pollution. What did the economy actually look like in Reagan's presidency? And in the beginning, for the first couple of years, there's actually a lot of inflation still. The United States enters into a depression. So this is not the economic promise that the Reagan administration had promised. Reagan does say, keep calm, it will turn, we just have to wait. If that rhetoric sounds familiar, go back to the Great Depression with Herbert Hoover. Things will get better, things will get better, and it never seemed to get better. Unemployment during this time does reach 10%, which is a pretty significant number. But things finally do turn around, and this will help lead to a re-election in 1984 for Ronald Reagan. Couple of takeaways from this chart. On the right, we just finished talking about the economy and how things were pretty rough for the beginning of the Reagan administration. And you can see that inflation was pretty significant um, in the early years of the Reagan presidency and leading up to the Reagan presidency. You also notice 4 pillars of Reaganomics. I'm not asking you to recall all of these on something like an exam, but you should be able to recognize some of the basics of Reaganomics in there, such as reduce government, regulation. Then, when it comes to the Economic Recovery Tax Act, you'll notice reduced, 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 reduced. This is the new right and their tenets of getting the government out of things such as um, not taxing the American people quite as much. What also becomes a tenet of the new right is an increase in military and defense spending. This is a departure from détente. This is the buildup of weaponry, and it is forcing the hope. One of the hopes is that it forces the Soviet Union to keep pace with spending. Okay, so that's what happens with the what the new right does under Reagan. It spends a lot of money on defense. This also creates a year-to-year budget deficit. So a budget deficit when the government spends more in 1 year than what it takes in. Okay, this creates a deficit in a single year. This happening year after year creates what is called the national debt, and this is the accumulation of yearly deficits. Um, this is the national debt increases sharply during the Reagan administration, and the uptick in military and defense spending is a large reason why. Some of the successes, but especially the economic success that the United States has during this time, leads Reagan to his reelection. And during that second term, Reagan actually has the opportunity to appoint 3 Supreme Court justices. It turns the Supreme Court more conservative. One of the noteworthy headlines of the 3 Supreme Court justices is Sandra Day O'Connor. Sandra Day O'Connor is the first female Supreme Court justice. This conservative movement, the conservative surge continues, and things are going well enough that Reagan's vice president in 1988 is elected into office. That president is George H.W. Bush. Quick chart that you can read through. I'll try and sum up some of this as quick as possible, but for a little bit of context, Keynesian economics. This was the this Keynesian economics solved macroeconomic problems ever since FDR and the Great Depression. So throughout the decades, Keynesian economics, which was the government spending a lot of money in order to jumpstart the economy. This was believed in many ways to have solved macroeconomic problems, but the 1970s came around and it wasn't being solved with Keynesian economics. This is why Reagan and the new right were able to come in and say, hey, we need to look at supply side economics. This needs to be the response to solve some of these issues regarding inflation and the economic issues of the 1970s. Main takeaways from this chart here, both situations or both types of economic responses start with the same issue, and that is there's an economic slowdown, there's a recession, there's a problem with the economy. Both have the same goal. You want economic recovery. Keynesian versus supply side economics. This is just, each of these are two different viewpoints on how to best solve an economic crisis. The democratic model is the Keynesian economics. And then, as we see now, the supply side economics does become the Republican model, and this fits right in with their wanting to cut taxes. That's it. We will see you next time.